Welcome at Art Talks. Today we have a special guest, Lyan van Furth, and he has been elected as the world's best food photographer, not one time, but 5 times. Welcome, Lyan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I was pondering how to start and I arrived at the following. I think you're the best kept secret in the kitchen.
Oh, that sounds nice.
And that is because you're a food photographer and you're working with the most, you work with high-end chefs.
Yeah.
Which also means, because they have art in their kitchen, can you take us along? How does that work? How do the chefs, in a way, tolerate you when you're doing your art?
Well, I don't know how they tolerate me, but yeah, that's a nice question.
Mm-hmm.
It's more that I feel the energy of the chef, the kitchen, the whole business, and I like that environment. It gives me energy too. So for me, it's important that they see that I like their product, that I like what they're doing. I like to be in the kitchen around them. A lot of high-end restaurants nowadays also have art in their restaurants. Not in the kitchen, but yeah, in the restaurants they have, because they want to tell a story. And the story is not only, here's your food, but the story is we think about the food. We think about the process of the food or where it came from. The people sitting in the restaurant, also part of the whole experience. And I can see that it's going wider and wider instead of just only the plate. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, that's.
Yeah, so maybe paint a picture a bit more. So you work as a food photographer.
Yeah.
Who are the people you work with? How does that work?
Well, a lot of chefs, it's a little bit of a closed environment, all the chefs, especially high-end restaurants, but I can see that they talk about the food and also about the photographer, about the pictures. Everything is in that little group. So if something is good, it could be olive oil, then it goes around the circle. And I'm in that circle too. So that way you keep connecting with new restaurants.
So how did you end up in the circle?
Well, I was doing a year course for journalistic photography, and I had to follow a person for 2 days. I'm into food and stuff like that, so I was like, why not ask a chef? So I went to Dennis Huwai from Daalder in Amsterdam, and I asked him, can I follow you for 2 days? And he was like, I don't know even know who you are, but I trust you, you can do this. So I was there for 2 days, following him and making a whole story about his life. And as a thank you, I said, okay, I can do some food photography for you. He didn't have anything yet. And he was happy with it. I was happy with it, but it wasn't there yet. So then I started to learn more about food photography because I'm interested in that. And then I started trying some new stuff out with lights and shadows. And I was looking at Rembrandt, for instance. I was like, yeah, I like the way that light, can I recreate that light? And I called up Dennis and I said, can we try something with the light? And he said, yeah, come over. And so we did that for maybe half a year. I keep learning and trying and doing. And after a while, he thought I was good enough. I thought I'm still learning, of course. And then he introduced me to a new chef, and that chef introduced me to another one. And then I did an event with chefs. And so he come in the circle.
And I'm going to unpack it all, because it's quite interesting, because it's a closed circle, you say. You started with following someone, and it's quite a high-paced environment within the kitchen. If we look from the outside in, we think, okay, this is a world that not a lot of people can imagine what it's really like. Can you?
Well, if you're in a high-end kitchen, it's actually really quiet. I mean, they're not yelling, they're not, it's when they do the mise en place, so when they do the preparations, that's in the afternoon, then there's the radio's on, there's a lot of noise, there's sound, whatever. But when there's service, it's quiet. People know what they're doing their job, and there's a flow in the kitchen, how they walk, where they put stuff. And if I take photos of that, I feel that flow. So I can stand behind them. I go in that dance with them in the kitchen. And you say behind, and then the chef knows there's somebody behind you. I can even stand right behind them, and they don't even care. Because as long as I go in the flow, you can do whatever you want in that kitchen, even if it's a really small kitchen.
So you started with that, saying, hey, I feel the energy. So you're combining things. One, you are accepted in such a sort of high-paced environment because you are becoming sort of invisible by understanding what the dance is in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And because you are acting and dancing with them in that kitchen, you can come really close.
Yeah.
Because it's not something which is from far behind. It's really detailed work.
Yeah, and I keep scanning what's going on in that kitchen because I also listen to what they're saying. So I know, okay, the chef is going there because he said this and that. So you're not in the way. You're just going with the flow. And that's really important, that you know their humor, because there's humor in the kitchen. And you also know when to be serious, because that's also very important. Sometimes they just want silence. And you can see that the chef is annoyed by too much noise or whatever. You have to look at the non-verbal behavior as well.
So could you even say that there's a sensitivity you have that allows you to do this work?
Yeah. I think that's very important. But to scan people and recognize their emotion at that time. And I think in life, that's a good feature to have, but in the kitchen, that's really important. Yeah, because I'm actually a spectator, but I do need to be there to make the right photos. So I have to put myself in that kitchen, so they have to see me as well. So I'm in a way invisible, but I also have to be seen. So I'm in between that.
You're in between the visible and the invisible or invisible. And then on top of that, then there's your own goal, because you want to make the best picture there is. And you make a link with the art, like you were referring to Rembrandt.
Yeah.
Then the light comes in. Can you take us along in that step then?
Yeah, for me, I like the Rembrandt light, the way he uses the light, so that the tension of the shadow and the light, that's really important to me. So I created a light setup for me that works. I first learned how everything supposed to be done. So people using flashlights and stuff like that. And then I don't like that, the way the shadow falls. I don't like that harsh light. I don't like the reflection of that harsh light. So how can I make that softer and more aesthetic to me? And I tested that with the chef. I bought some lights, and then sometimes I brought them back the next day. It was like, this is not it. I kept on testing with filters in between, with whatever, until I had that specific thing that I liked. And I was happy that a lot of chefs also liked it. And it doesn't have to be always dark pictures, because Rembrandt is a little bit dark, but it's the way of the light. So I can use that same light setup in a white environment or a dark environment. It doesn't matter for me. The shadows are still soft. The reflection are soft. There's no reflection of whatever sky into the photos. I don't like all that stuff. It takes me more effort, but for me, if I would show you the picture the way I do it, or you take that same picture and you have, for instance, a shiny thing on your plate, and you see the clouds from the outside in the plate, or you don't see it in the plate, that's a big difference in the photo. If you see it next to each other. If I showed you the one with the reflection from the clouds, you would say, oh, that's a nice photo. But for me, it's like, no.
It doesn't fully work.
Yeah, I want to focus on the art of the chef, because I really believe they make art. And I want to translate that art into a photo. And that's my art then.
Yeah, so you made it into art to make a really beautiful photo of something that is already an artwork. And with that, you give the chef a story.
Yeah.
I mean, you share the story of the chef, and then that sort of conveys into the world.
Yeah.
But then there's basically a whole world behind making
that's well
such
put
a picture
like that.
happen. So there is one picture that we have here as an example. If you see that at first, it's a picture and it looks quite big, but there is detail to it.
This is, I don't know if you can see my hands, but it's big like this. So it's a one bite thing. But it's a lot of work to make. I know this because I'm in the kitchens a lot of times, so I know a lot about the process of how they make the food. I cannot do it myself, but I know the techniques. And so I like it that it's so small, but I can make it look bigger. I can make you focus and see things that you would normally not see with the naked eye. Because if you just look at the little thing, you have to do something to enlarge it for yourself. But in this case, I did that for you, and you can really go into that dish. And for the chef, it's important because it's important the way I take the photo, because he wants to show everything, the little ribbons, the caviar has to look good. So that's really important to the chef, that I translate that to the world. Okay, we made this, because I could take this from a top view photo, for instance, but then I only see caviar and I see a little end of the crispy part. And he did all the effort for the crispy part and put the caviar on top. So I have to know what he wants to tell. I'm not asking him or her.
Yeah, so you're sensing in a way already what the story is.
Yeah.
And you translate that sense into a real visual story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you become the world's best food photographer.
Yeah.
There is a big leap between saying, hey, can I follow you? And even sort of boldly say, hey, I'm jumping on a motorcycle and I'm going to just follow one of the biggest chefs in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Take us along from here to then not only one time, but then 5 times the world's best food photographer.
That platform, I was trying to measure myself because I was new into food photography. So I look at other photographers or websites, whatever, because you want to learn and see how other people do stuff. And I was like, okay, how can I measure myself, how good I am? Because I don't know. I just want to know. It's funny. So I looked up the biggest platform that did something with food photography, and I found Foodelia. And they have photographers from all over the world sending in photos. So I was like, yeah, this is a really nice one to compete with, or at least see where I stand. So I sent him some photos, and I got some awards for the first photos. And I was like, okay, that's pretty nice. And I was still looking at the other photographers and still learning and growing. So after the first year, I send in more photos every month, because every month you send in photos, you get points. And at the end of the year, the one with most points is the winner. So I kept on doing that. And so I won the award the first time. And I was like, okay, all these good photographers, and I'm in here and I'm number 1 now. So at first I was proud, but it was more like I couldn't really believe it. And I just kept on doing it, and it kept on working.
But that also says something about you, in a way, that sort of the first time sort of didn't count, was just a surprise.
Yeah.
And then you really perfect yourself. And then after 5 times, you're like, hey, wow.
Yeah, but I think if you would see yourself as an artist because you're creating something, it's always hard to believe that you're really the best, or that you're really, you always want to keep growing. So for me, when I look at pictures that I made 5 years ago, I would say, why did I do this? If I took it a week ago, I still have that same thing.
So you're self-critical in that sense.
Yeah, always. Because it's always like, you can always grow, and there's always somebody telling something about the photo. If I show it to you or another person, that's why I let my photos be curated by people who don't know a lot about photography. My girlfriend, for instance, I always show her my pictures first. She has no idea about the technique, but do you understand the photo? What's going on? Do you like it? The colors, the shadow, whatever. And you get different kind of feedback than from a professional photographer, because they're always like, yeah, I know you tried this technique, and then it's like
they're starting to make it rational.
Yeah,
and what you say is, I really want to touch somebody, like your girlfriend.
Yeah.
In that sense. So it is a wider scope you're bringing along into your art.
And I like that heavy critique also, because sometimes it's like, okay, yeah, but why did you? And then I'm like, yeah, you're right. Actually, I did something wrong there. But
And is it then also because I started the conversation with, okay, how do they tolerate you in the kitchen, which is a bit. But in a way, does that also mean in your collaboration with these chefs, you basically, you have that same sense of determined, to make it really beautiful?
I have sometimes, because I tell them I'm always so precise, and most of the high-end chefs are also very precise. Sometimes I have a round plate, there's a round middle with a round thing in the middle. Then it has to be in the middle for me. I cannot.
You cannot.
No, that's impossible. So then I tell the chef, it's not in the middle. It's in the middle. I said, no, look. Yes, you're right. Kitchen. And then you have to.
So you challenge each other then in a way, or you even challenge
and they like it that I'm so precise. I have my pincette with me because sometimes,
like a chef.
Like a chef, and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing? And why are you touching my food?" But it has to be perfect, because for me, when I edit the photo, I can see that it wasn't perfect, and it should be.
Yeah. And can you share some other stories about your work with those chefs? And then later I want to move on to sort of a dream that you might have. So I'm just...
Yeah, that's a hard question, just to have a story.
Not a story, but if you go into that kitchen and if you sort of transport yourself, okay, you're both artists in that kitchen.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, in general, because chefs are they're making different kind of art. That's how I see it. But in general, they're a type of person. You know what I mean? It's the chef. It's how they're sometimes more introvert. For instance, they have a lot of humor, and they're really focused on their products and their work. They don't necessarily eat their own product, for instance, because they like hamburgers or whatever, but that's always, people think always, they eat that all day. But it's a really warm environment, because when I come in there, it's always like, hey, you're here, you're welcome, and everybody's prepared because I'm there. And that makes you feel so welcome. And that's the business, of course, but it's also nice that behind the scenes, it's also like that. They're really into making you feel good. Yeah,
so it's not the story. I mean, you share the story of the chef, but basically you enter their world. Yeah. And their world is also, the inside is the outside, and otherwise it cannot work.
Yeah. And I like it that they, with the whole team, they prepare for me when I'm coming in. So everybody knows I'm there. Because I shoot the dishes, but I also shoot the restaurant, and when people are at work, it's also a way of showing what they're doing, that it's all handmade. It's not, prefab stuff. And it's nice to show them that they're cutting the fish, because they're really doing it there. And all the hard work they put in, that little thing, you could show in steps almost what's going on before you have that on your plate. And then people start to understand why they pay the prices for it sometimes, because it's all high end. It's they have to know all these techniques. It's a lot of work, and it's nice for me to tell that story to the world.
Yeah, so you make visible what's not visible. Yeah. And also the labor that goes into something like a high-end restaurant, being a chef, and not only the flashy pictures of what we normally see, but you really put the labor also into the labor.
Yeah. And and one thing I noticed because now I'm in a lot of kitchens, I can see how clean they work. Because we see bad stories on television about kitchens, but I've never seen a non-clean kitchen. They're all clean, and they work clean, and hygienic, and it's amazing to see how they do that. I started to take over some of that stuff to my house. Sometimes my daughter is like, it's a little bit too much cleanliness for me, but my kitchen is spotless.
Spotless, yeah. As a final question, I would love to hear, because you've had this whole journey, what is the advice you would give aspiring artists in their journey?
I think it sounds kind of lame, but I think
Let's end with something lame.
yeah, because it's actually really true. I think you should really do something that you like and still learn, because I think it's important that you learn what is the norm, so you know about techniques or whatever. And then first you know all the rules, and then you bend them. And then bend them towards something that makes you happy. Because if I look at my photos and I'm editing the photos, I can sometimes feel my jaws because I'm smiling all the time because I really love what I'm doing. And then you want to be better all the time. If you miss that part, I think you would never grow. And it's nice to have critique from people. Doesn't matter who they are, and doesn't matter if they're right or wrong. That it's an opinion.
It informs your work.
Yeah.
To make your work better.
Yeah.
And then that makes you.
And sometimes you really believe in something. Sometimes the chef tells me, "Can you take that photo like this or that?" I do it. But on the other hand, I take my photo as well the way I like it. And then I show them both. And most of the time it's like, "Oh, I'm happy you make that." So it's your vision, and believe in that vision somehow. And that took me a long time to believe that for me. So it would be nice if somebody could take that step a little bit quicker.
So to basically say, hey, you have a vision, and don't doubt that sense you have.
Yeah.
Just follow it.
But keep learning on the side.
Keep learning.
Yeah.
You don't have to shove away the rules, because you can then bend the rules to your liking.
Yeah.
But it goes both ways.
And sometimes, because that's what I learned for myself, sometimes when you get critique, you think you always make an excuse for yourself. Like, yeah, that was because this or that. And I had to learn for myself to be honest to myself and say, okay, do I make up an excuse, or do I really believe actually what you're saying, but it's a lot of work for me to change it.
Yeah.
But I do want to change it. And that part is
that requires some honesty to yourself.
And
like, can I listen fully, truly?
Yeah. But that made me grow.
Yeah.
When I realized that sometimes you say, I don't want it, but it's actually you do want it, but it's just a lot of work, and you're like, I don't know.
You wanted to take the easy route.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to thank you for the conversation. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.